This V is terrible. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Terrible in the sense if you thought this was a true 84 reissue. This is another one from the Guitar of the Week series, when Gibson did 47 limited edition guitars all in 1 year. Now, this is not one of the most popular ones, but it's definitely within the top 20. It's a very interesting, what they called a 1984 reissue Flying V, and they adopted this cool Silverburst finish for it. And personally, I'm a big fan of Silverburst, so I've always had kind of a soft spot to this one because I just thought it looked incredibly cool. But let's talk about this finish. Silverburst first existed in the year 1977. That is when very few prototypes showed up on a Les Paul Custom. However, the first official year is halfway through 1978, making 1979 that first full entire year run. But how long did original Silverburst last? About until the beginning of the Henry J era. Around 1986, it really starts to slow down. Now, do you have like the Showcase Edition series that has it? And can you find it on some custom lights? Yes, we're not saying it's impossible to find it later in 80s or in the 90s, but when Silverburst first started to come back, it was around 2003 when Sam Ash did an exclusive run of dark back Silverbursts. Now, I'm not sure if they were trying to reference the initial prototype ones having dark backs, or if they were just trying to save money, but ever since that 2003 run, you started to see more and more every year, and eventually they get their Silverburst color back. So as a friendly reminder here, Guitar of the Week was done in the year 2007. So this is like at the forefront of when this finish was starting to come back as Gibson putting it on things. Because it's iconically a 70s finish, so why are we putting it on an 84 style Flying V? In fact, I cannot actually find a single vintage 1984 Flying V in this color. Now, does that mean that there wasn't a small custom shop edition run of them back in the 80s and I just haven't seen one? That's totally possible, because burst finishes like these did exist on this style Flying V. Check out the bluish Silverburst or the Night Violet finish. Whereas, unfortunately, this one does not get that fancy treatment, although it would have made it way cooler. I can at least confirm that the Silverburst finish was used on the full-on Big Mac Daddy style Flying V in the late 70s and early 80s. So that's kind of another thing that gave this one a little bit of notoriety. It was something different. However, in calling it an 84, it draws scrutiny because they did a really terrible job at reissuing all the classic 84 specs. So first thing, an 84 Flying V is going to have this headstock style. It's got the Gibson decal logo with your regular bell style truss rod cover. This Guitar of the Week version decided to go for a black 67 style truss rod cover, and I would argue it still has the regular 67 style headstock, maybe not quite as rounded, but fairly close. So if you look at the top of the headstock, it might not look all that different, but look at the edges of it. See how rounded over and soft the edges are on an original, whereas these are the more pointy 67 style over here. But our next thing are the pickups. So this featured the hot ceramic 496R 500T set, whereas most 80s Flying Vs in this body style will feature the Dirty Fingers pickups. Now this one, it's a little bit of an anomaly. It actually happened to get Tim Shaw PAF stock. The biggest thing is, look at our control layout. This is the triangle controls of the 80s V. 2 independent volumes for each pickup and a master tone with the toggle switch up here. And then we come over here and it's like, oh, what have we done, Gibson? They simplified it to master volume, master tone with three-way toggle switch all the way up there and output jack right there. And in doing so, it changed the back plate style. Maybe that's why they did it, less plastic to use. So we got the finish wrong, we got the pickups wrong, we got the headstock style and truss rod cover wrong. Did they at least get the body specs right with the maple neck and all their body? No. It's mahogany. It's kind of like our modern day 80s Flying V. They paid tribute to it, but really modernized it to the point where it's not necessarily recognizable as what it's supposed to be. Now, to be fair, only the first couple of years of the new 80s style Flying V actually had that construction. Post 1985, they would be mahogany like this, but they specifically called it an 84, so I'm going to call them out for it. So you kind of have to love and appreciate these things for what they are. In 2009, they did an additional run where you can find a vintage Sunburst as well as a natural one if you want to see the mahogany wood grain. However, credit where credit is due, these indeed feature ebony fretboards, and some 80s Vs actually incorporated that. Not all of them, but this was before 2011 when they stopped using Ebony on all these Gibson USA line products and only reserved it for special things due to the government raid. So if you're looking for a one-to-one reissue, this is an utter fail. But if you can just appreciate it for what it is, it's actually quite unique. And as all Guitar of the Week guitars in this series, they made a maximum of 400 of them. And besides the guitar on this one, you did get a nice hardshell case. It's one of the versions with the upgraded handle. I always love these. And you still have the combo lock. And case candy-wise, you get your truss rod wrench, pre-pack warranty checklist, combo lock instruction card, and your Gibson owner's manual. But before we throw this one on the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs, you might be curious, where did this one come from? These are incredibly hard to find in clean shape, so when somebody messaged me with this in the title, I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely interested. Now he was actually pitting dealers against each other to see who would pay him the most for this piece. And I honestly didn't think my bid was going to win, because I was going up against another dealer who specializes in 80s pointy guitars and whatnot, but he ended up choosing my offer because he wanted to see it documented, and he did his best trying to show me any blemishes this thing had, such as lacquer shrinking lines along the neck. You can tell this might not have been stored properly because some of the inlays are starting to pop, and you have a little bit of that around the neck too, but as far as these things go, this is in incredibly good condition, so yes, it is being added to my personal collection as we try to continue to piece together the entire Guitar of the Week set. So now, let's go ahead and throw it on the workbench to take a look at all these specs and then get to that playing sample. Inside our V, let's go ahead and check out our pickups. So unfortunately, we do not have any stickers on the back. You just have the Gibson USA baseplate, and the same is true for our bridge. That means we'll have to go by pickup readings, which in this case, 15.22 in the bridge, 8.27 in the neck, and the middle, just for fun, a little over 6. How do we know these are original? We'll have to look inside the back control plate, see if anything's ever been touched. Then we can go based on spec sheets. But if you just have a loose Gibson pickup, there's a lot of them that read similar to that. You would actually have to take it apart, look at the magnets, and that's not something I want to do. On the bridge pickup, you can see the strings have kind of caught it and wore away some of the plastic. Here's a quick look at the pickup cavities. Short neck tenon, but you get the continuation of our Silverburst finish. And we can see the mahogany body wood grain very clearly in this cavity. But for Henry J era, wow, these cavities are actually very nice. Usually you get wood splintering and everything. This caught my attention. Somebody put a black Sharpie mark on each of the thumb wheels, probably to help them set it up. I'd never seen that done before, but it actually makes a lot of sense. At first I thought it was like flaking plating, but no. We've got the PW branded bridge. Then here's the tailpiece. Nice shiny chrome. The condition of this one is just beautiful though. I'm not seeing like any major nicks or dings, and that's the hardest thing about this one. They show up often enough on the used market, but to find one that's not beat up because of the style of guitar it is. But if you get this in the light just right, you can see the mahogany wood grain through the finish due to lacquer sink. I always thought this control layout looked weird and doofy, but from a playing standpoint, it actually does make sense. You've got your toggle switch easy location, because that's the one you're going to use probably the most. Then right under there, you've got your master volume, and then the one off to the side is your tone, so you have an easy pathway to each. You don't have anything in your way. However, I have seen people modify these to move the tone over here, and then they just swap the output jack location. You can do that without breaking the solder joints if you wanted them in a line, but then your jack would kind of be in your way. So even though this does kind of look doofy, and it's not traditional, it is definitely usable. Moving on from our mahogany body to our mahogany neck, we've got the ebony fretboard. So I was telling you earlier about the fretboard expanding and causing those lacquer lines and how some of these inlays on the side like to poke out. That is very common in this era. Sometimes I think it's just the wood itself. Usually when you see that in photos, like if you're buying a guitar, just know you're probably also going to have ridiculously bad fret sprout. Like this example, you can see the lacquer's actually chipped off the edge. And sometimes the actual lacquer itself along the board will start chipping and it becomes very sharp. Thankfully, this one got to a better environment before that happened. But somebody has definitely rounded these frets off, because that is not how Gibson does their fret ends on unbound boards. Like, this is nicer. As far as the inlays, they're just small dots, making it error correct for this particular model. And they're made of an acrylic material. I measure 1.72 inches at the nut, increasing to 2.1 by the 12th, a 0.83 first fret neck depth, increasing to only 0.89 by the 12th, so more of a 60s slim taper C shape, which is similar to the original 80s Vs. Holding them side by side, they do feel very similar. Here's that neck profile at the 1st fret and the 12th fret, rather wide feeling neck, yet still a nice C shape. Then we've got our headstock. Now, do we have some minor delamination of the finish around it? Yeah, well, that's pretty common. Just like this around the nut. So that's not actually a finish crack. That's the line where the fretboard joins to the body. As I was showing you earlier, I mean, you can see it in many locations. Trust me, this is far from the worst I've ever seen. That's why I didn't let it scare me away from buying it. Truss rod's in perfect shape. Here you can see the silver Gibson logo that is reflective on the black truss rod cover. That's more 67 in style. Moving on to the backside. If you get it in the light just right, you can see a seam line right there, so I would assume there's probably another one there, so it's at least a 3-piece body. There's some sort of like a contamination within the paint right there where it's raised up a bit. But other than a few minor scratches, it's in pretty good shape. Here's what the route looks like underneath our back control plate. So if you wanted to add another control in here, like usual, you could. Got a Switchcraft output jack, 2 Gibson branded CTS pots, and then they actually wire the pickups up directly to the 3-way toggle switch on this one. Everything looks okay to me, so those should be the original 496R 500T set. As an added bonus, the protective film is still over top of the back plate. That's crazy collector talk for cool. Looks like our strap buttons have been messed with at some point in time due to how chewed up the screws are, but our other one is on the base side horn. And now moving up the side of the mahogany neck. Everything's looking okay here. But I did notice some finish checking here on the headstock, right underneath the tuners if you have it in the light just right. But over here, if you think that's a crack or something, no, that's just a seam line of the wings that they put on the headstock. Because that's what caught my attention first. It's like, oh, is that a crack coming from the screw? But no, that's just the seam line. But here's our serial number. It looks like maybe the 288th day of 2007, initial batch, production number 597, with our Made in USA up here at the top. All said and done, this one weighs 7 pounds, 9.2 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how this version sounds. Yeah, you can definitely tell those are the hot ceramic pickups by the way they drive the clean tones. But you can always dial that down to 7 to tame them. we know all about Guitar of the Week number 40 from Gibson. Was it my favorite guitar? No, but honestly, I'm not that much of a Flying V guy outside of like the original 70s ones, because I think those are just a little bit more magical. But if you're a big fan of the thrash metal scene and you grew up in this era, I'm sure you'll love this guitar. It's certainly not a faithful recreation of an 84 V, but you know, it blends in some interesting elements while bringing something new to the table. So if you already have an 80s V in your collection, this is something similar but different, and in a cool finish, depending on who you ask. Alright, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode and you make use of your new guitar knowledge. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.